good to see you again. It's been a while,
I
kind
know,
of.
no. It's always a pleasure seeing you, though. We always have a lot to chat about. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
happy.
think I've been doing a lot of thinking. I think thinking about how you and I worked together when we first met under those circumstances, and till until today, it's been I don't know how many years. Let's say 10 years with working in agencies, and we've seen different agencies. You're aware of so many different creative agencies, design agencies, and we've worked for them as well. Now, like with the way the market is, you know how the market is at the moment. It's really competitive in
Yes,
terms of project work and people searching for jobs and with all the tech layoffs.
yes.
How are you going with reflection and thinking about, have you thought about your time in design agencies from way back when until now, and a comparison of like where you were back then, how life was back then in agencies versus how it is now? What are you seeing as some of the pros and cons, some of the good and bad?
I mean, the industry's definitely changed since I started. Um, I mean, back then when we first met, I actually had no idea what UI UX even was. Now, that's I suppose it's kind of a mainstream word. A lot of people seem to know. A lot more people seem to know what it actually is. I think that's the biggest thing in the last sort of 10 years, that we designers started to have a seat on the table, and the thinking and the stuff that we do we was started to be more valuable for businesses. And I mean, back then it was kind of a hard sell. Even when we worked together, I remember we had to justify everything that we did. It was like we needed to convince people why it was valuable, why design mattered. I think now it's a bit more understood, but I think in the process of that, and naturally the way in which it evolved, it became another business asset. And that meant design was all of a sudden looked at in a different way. So, I think as designers, we think creatively, we think outside the box. I think we had to adapt to the business side of things. We had to learn how to run, how to even have a conversation with someone that was more business driven as opposed to design driven. But I think in that process, the magic of design got lost a little bit, because it was all of a sudden something completely different. It was to please or to meet a target, actually, or to please someone with a higher voice in these business conversations. I think design originally was, or it's always been intended to solve problems creatively. And all of a sudden the conversation kind of shifted to be, how can design make more money for us? And that comes with a price. I think it does have a lot of value, and it is important that we also think about the business side of things as designers. But I think there is when the spectrum goes too heavy on one side, and all of a sudden design, it's just about that, I think, you kind of run into a dangerous territory, because all of a sudden you're taking away everything, or the real magic of design, which, as I said, it's solving problems in a different way.
Yeah, I remember at one point when we were working together, I think what you're saying hit true because you remember that we were at the mercy of clients many times.
Yes.
We were a small team, and I experienced this 15 years prior to that as well, where you're just designing something that is already marked on paper, like it's something that the client has agreed to with someone else,
Yeah,
and then designers get that brief, but it's quite an empty brief because it says, "Hey, designers, design this thing for this client." That's what they're
yeah,
expecting to receive in 4 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever was agreed upon. We didn't really have much say. I think that many times being at the mercy, you're right, like design just was an afterthought because it's like you were shackled. You couldn't get creative because the project had restrictions, right? So
yeah,
as a designer, what do? You're there designing something from day one where you know already what it should look like in the end, whether you agree
Yeah.
with it or not. And I don't think we were happy with anything. I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I don't think we were happy with many things that we designed because you looked at it and you thought, where's my stamp? Where's my creative thinking in this thing that we've now delivered to
Yeah.
the client? And we'll most likely never hear from them again. I think that was
Yeah.
very frustrating. I think a lot of young people, not so much young in terms of age, but young in terms of design experience getting into the industry, I don't think they know that. I think now it's
Yeah.
become, hey, I need a job and I will put up with whatever I'm given to design. But as designers, what I say, true designers, yeah, how do you scratch that creative itch if you're not in control of it?
That's an interesting one because even today, I still grapple with that, right? There isn't a project, but the amount of the ratio of projects that I'm 100% happy with are very small in comparison to the ones that I guess I'm up still to an extent to the mercy of the client. And especially as a freelancer, you have to go through that. I think if you're not prepared to do that, then you shouldn't be a freelancer because more often than not, you're there to provide a service. And sometimes being at the mercy of that service means that the client often already has an idea of what they want. And then there is a bit of a negotiation process in the creative journey, right? Where you sort of go, I love that idea, but how about we do it this way? As a designer, I feel like you have to learn that the hard way. I don't think universities prepare you for it. I think universities sort of go, here is a perfect idea of what a project looks like. You go off and, you have all the time and the creative freedom that you want. And then reality hits once you start working in the industry and you realize that's not so much how it works.
You know what it reminds me of? It's after being married to a school teacher for many years, what you
Yeah.
just said. If you go to college or university as a designer or as a teacher, you're taught the theory. You might work on a couple of practical projects, but yeah, it doesn't really prepare you for the reality of being in that room and needing to deal with all different type of factors and circumstances. Well, here's
Yeah.
how you communicate with a client. Here's how you present your work. Here's how you defend your design or whatever it is. I don't
Yeah.
think it was that. I think you're just learning it all on the job and hoping that whatever leadership is there can give you the sort of power to have those conversations, because that's what I would see back then as well. These days it seems, because the market is the way it is, it's kind of shifted, it's different. Back then there were plenty of jobs for us. We didn't have a shortage of, design jobs. We
Yeah.
from one agency to another, but finding that right project that scratched that itch, I don't know if it was there. I think every Monday morning, we didn't know what to expect, like which project we're going
Yeah.
to have land on our desk, whether it's I don't know, an IT company or
We did a lot of plumbing websites and random things like that, actually. Looking back, I feel like, and just for context as well, like the reason why I ended up there was because I was looking for an internship at the time. So I was about to end my degree at uni. At the time, you basically had to do, I can't remember if it was a few weeks or a month worth of internships. And everyone at uni was out and about looking for design studios, like the cool design studios, right?
yeah,
And then I thought, well, of course, I love the whole graphic design aspect of what I was doing, but there was something in me that kind of clicked where I was like, I want to see more about this digital world and see how design actually merges with tech. So I kind of went on a different direction, and that's how I ended up finding you and finding the agency where we worked. It was like the better version of university in a way. And I always say that that internship taught me way more than 4 years of a degree, 100%. Like up until this day, a lot of the lessons that I learned there, I apply them to my day to day because we basically had to improvise. It
Yeah.
was we didn't have many resources. We didn't, like you said, like a lot of the times we had not the greatest clients. We didn't have any processes. We didn't have much, but we found a way to make it happen. I think that teaches you so much. When you land in a place where everything's kind of given to you, you sort of learn a different way. Whereas we were actually implementing the foundation, and you were building effectively that design foundation for this agency. And being able to see that firsthand taught me way more than anything that I've learned up until that point. So it
Yeah.
was actually a real positive experience.
As a side point, I think if you and I were if we were developing a university curriculum today for like
Yeah.
a 12-month master's program or something, I think these things would be part of it where you'd have to go and embed yourself in an environment somewhere like that to really
Yeah.
cut your teeth, as we say. Like teaching degrees do that. You have to go and do a bit of a practical thing in classroom.
Yeah.
But I think for designers, especially today with the way technology is moving and evolving and the way that business is being conducted, I think what you went through at that time, it was 3 months. I remember that program that I put together, but in that you could do a 3-month placement and come out the other side and
Yes.
you could answer that question for yourself of, is this industry for me or not? Did I love it or hate it? Because a lot of what we did was like tough love learning. It was
Yeah.
like limited resources, debates, and we know that this doesn't feel right from a design perspective, but we'll do it anyway. And then we're trying to learn together as well. And there's a lot of things. And I think it was a great bit of education.
I think so. And we didn't have the greatest briefs, but we always found a way to introduce and inject a little bit of creativity in the process. Like we were working with, like a lot of small businesses, but we always wanted to scratch that creative itch, and somehow we found a way to do it. And I think clients appreciated it, and then even internally, people started appreciating it as well. Like, oh, these guys actually can produce some amazing work. Like, let's start paying more attention to it.
If you and I were if we were establishing our own design agency today, what's your vision for that? If I said to you, hey, let's go and create this thing, what would it look like?
Good question. I think first off, I will start by defining why we want to do it. I had a design agency relatively recent. I think the biggest thing that kept me awake was knowing by heart what made us different. And we did have an idea of what that looked like. But I think being the person that I am, I always want that to be crystal clear, partly because there's a lot of competition out there. There are so many design agencies. And every single day there's a new design agency, right? There's so many practices. So I think having a very clear purpose makes a difference. I will definitely start there. And I think once you define that, then everything's a lot more easier. The clients that you get, the sort of work that you pitch, the way that you communicate, that's your edge. And trust me, I think if that is very clear, people will come to you, and they will see, and they will come to you for the right projects. In return, I think that makes the work even more enjoyable because it aligns with your purpose, your goals. I don't know if that's much of a vision, but it's more of
Yeah.
the foundational side of things. I think that's where I will
Yeah.
start.
That's why I was asking. And because many of the agencies I worked with seem to lack that foundation or that purpose and principle, as I call it, the purpose of why are we here? What do we want to do? Why do we exist? And then what do we believe in? Even from a business perspective, but more importantly, from a design perspective, what do we actually believe in? What are our principles that we want to adhere to? Because you're right, it's like agencies are kind of like a McDonald's. They're on every corner, and
Yeah.
you can go the cheaper route, like freelancing websites that are out there. You can outsource. Why would you select a human-run agency when you can go and use an AI tool to build or outsource to some place
Yeah.
on the other side of the world? Yeah, why would people come to us? I think that was something that we would talk a lot about in the agency. It was, why would people choose us than another agency down the road?
Yeah.
Why should they come to us? Is it price point? Is it design sort of quality? Is it the added on benefits and services that they would provide? I don't think we were very clear on that back then because every other agency was kind of doing the same thing, the ones that we were competing with at least. And then you and I would look at agencies that were winning design awards and, well, what separates that design from what we can achieve?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the client, maybe it's the brand, maybe it's the philosophy behind it. I think that I think we lacked the story behind what we were designing. And a lot of those sites that you and I would look at in particular, they're building it around the story. They're not designing anything new, but they're telling a story and the client's bought into it, and then they can showcase that project. Whereas most of the projects we worked on, we didn't even showcase them because they were just
There was no depth.
rolling there wasn't really substance or depth behind it. So I think that's a very interesting thing with creating, because I've thought about it when people say, why don't you start your own agency? And I thought, well, what would be the purpose? How would we differentiate ourselves from others?
Yeah.
Well, we can based on our individual profiles, let's say. You could build it off that. Here are the founders. Here's what they believe in. Here's their story. And that's immediately unique.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there, and this is probably my next question is, okay, but then how do you get your first client?
Yes.
Do you have to start hitting the ground in terms of door knocking and networking? So I think my question to you is then, when you saw that and then you went and got involved in an agency, what does that look like? How do you first client, and is it like a time-based thing, or is it just based on conversations?
Well, so the whole idea of what you just described, the depth and the purpose, right? I think as an individual, I find that a lot easier to, I guess, define, because when you create an agency, yes, you can start the story based on you, but I think that can only go so far. What you just described is actually the biggest issue that I had, which was our story was around us. And I think there was something novel about that. And I think that gave us some level of purpose, but that's not necessarily what all clients will come to you for. Right. And so there comes another point, another layer to the story almost, which is, like beyond that point, how do you differentiate yourself? And yes, you can potentially be the more exclusive agency, or you can be the more boutique agency, or you can be the cheaper agency. But I think those aren't, in my opinion anyway, I don't think they make much of a difference. Again, I think if you want to attract the right clients, you need to have a very well-defined story that makes you unique. It's very easy to go, I've done all this work, I've worked for this many agencies, and I think I have enough experience to now start my own studio, but I don't think that should actually be the right path, because it's not a natural progression. The fact that you have a lot of experience doesn't mean that you can run a business or have your own studio. And I think that's learn.
Absolutely. You're right. I think some of us get carried away. I tried it in my early 20s. I thought I have a brilliant portfolio back then.
Yeah.
I'll just go and, start my own thing and clients will come and knock on the door. But
yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It's very naive. I think today though, I think a lot more people are doing it from what I'm seeing, because I don't know, it's different factors. Someone who struggled to find a job but has a portfolio is thinking, I'll go and start my own thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's fair enough. And then others are what you said, based on their portfolio. I think they just think, well, the portfolio itself is going to win me clients.
Yeah.
So there's that. I found it's more so, and you've seen this with like the bigger, not design agencies, but I don't want to throw any names out there. The bigger consulting firms, let's call them.
Yeah.
They win projects because of their account management skills. They'll go in and they'll sort of hold the client's hand, they'll tell a story, and they'll charge them 30% for project management. Doesn't mean they have better designers or better, projects. It's just that the way they sell it, the way they pitch, and the way they build relationships.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a freelancer and you're able to network and build relationships and you're approachable and likable, I think you're halfway there, because now
I think so.
You can design something unique for someone from scratch, but a lot of designers aren't even doing that. They're just using templates and AI builders to, like, they'll go door knocking in their local neighborhood to the physiotherapist, the bakery, the whatever small businesses, and they'll say, "Hey, I'll build your website for you in 3 weeks for $3,000."
Yeah.
Because it takes them like an hour in an AI tool, and then they'll get 3 or 4 clients a month.
Yeah.
It's still
And
design, but it's not like,
yeah. And look, there's some merit in that. I mean, the fact that someone's getting out there and knocking on someone's door, I think if you want to be a freelancer, actually, that's you're actually contributing to that 50% that you just said before. So there's some merit in that. And I think part of freelancing is, and it's almost the requirement of the job, that you have to build relationships and you have to get out there and speak to people. That's how you slowly build sort of your portfolio of clients that can give you work.
and you bypass the competition, because if you end up on Upwork, it's completely saturated. So
Yeah.
you're not going to stand out. But if you can go and start local and door knock in your local area and
Yeah.
see who has a bit of money to spend, no one's really doing that where you live.
It'd be interesting to see if actually, I mean, maybe I should do that around here and start knocking on people's doors and see
I'm
where.
pushing a lot of juniors especially. I'm like, you want to elevate your portfolio, you want to build experience, go and do that.
Yeah, I
That's
think that'd
that's
be
what we
good.
were doing in the 90s before the internet. You had your portfolio under your arm. You'd go and door knock at like architecture firms and furniture stores and
Yeah.
lawyers and people that had the money, and you'd offer to design their business cards and whatever collateral they wanted. So I mean, today you just have to know where to door knock.
I think if you're starting, it doesn't hurt. I mean, again, it goes back to the point we were making before. If you land a client, let's say by knocking on doors, there is a chance that you may end up working with a very difficult client, and because you're not really filtering them at that point. And so, but that could be a really positive experience because it's going to actually teach you how to manage a client, how to actually get the work done, get it done on time, to get paid on time. There's so many factors about being a freelancer, and with an agency that comes a lot more, right? But actually freelancing and having an agency, it's almost like they run in parallel universe, and there's a lot of stuff that it's very similar. I always say this to people: being a freelancer, you're your own business. Like, you have to get that like front of your mind, because you are, like I said, doing a lot more than just getting on the tools, and you have to be okay with it. You have to actually enjoy the accounting side of things. You have to enjoy the, what I call the hustling, which is getting out there, like you're saying, and basically networking and promoting your work. You're basically doing a lot more than just design. But if you don't have that very clear at the start, I hear a lot of people say, man, freelancing is so hard. Like, I can't think of, I can't live without knowing when my next paycheck it's going to come. And I think, yeah, I think it's not for everyone either. You have to be okay with uncertainty, because it's a roller coaster. Sometimes you have very busy months, like crazy busy months. And then sometimes you have like quieter months. And your job as a freelancer is to make sure that you kind of level that to a point where it's a bit more consistent. And that actually, it's not easy. It takes time to actually be able to do that. But again, like, you have to be okay with the roller coaster in the beginning, because you're not going to be able to start freelancing and have the perfect scenario. Like, there's always going to be ups and downs.
No, unless you have you've built a good network over a number of years that you can go and tap into,
Yeah.
and people know you already. But from the beginning, no. I mean, how are you finding that? Like, how are you finding the networking side and putting yourself out there? How are you doing it?
I enjoy it, actually. I mean, I like to, I guess, I'm a very talkative person. I think I don't have any issues like building relationships. But I've always said this as well. I don't want to build a relationship so that we can work together. That's not how I work. I particularly prefer to build a friendship, and then from that friendship, then if something comes out of that friendship, then awesome. So I'm not the type of person that will go to a networking event thinking, okay, I'm going to get my next project here. I rather build relationships naturally, organically, by potentially meeting a friend of a friend. And somehow it's worked for me that I always meet someone that maybe works at a place that eventually need a website, or I have worked with someone in the past as well. And that sort of led to other work in the future. So I think I would say for me personally, it's being more about working at an agency that and doing the best I can, and that will create a pool of a network of people that will branch off to other places, and then when they're at other places, different agencies or in-house or whatever, 6 months, a year. Sometimes it's crazy. Like I worked at an agency about 5 or 6 years ago, and then this year, someone that I met there is now CEO of a company, and
Mm.
he approached me. He said, "Hey, we need some creative design for our studio. Like, do you actually want to come and help us?" So yeah, it's really about making sure that wherever you go, you would do and you give your 150%, 200%, because you never know where that's going to lead.
I think if we take a leaf out of real estate agents, the good ones do it very well, what you described, where they will build genuine relationships so that one day, if it's you buying a property or your family member or a friend, you refer back. We know someone who we met maybe 8 years ago, just
Yeah.
randomly in an apartment they were selling, and became friends. We ended up years later buying a house off that person.
Yeah.
And now, if anyone is looking for a property in that particular area that they serve, by all means. Why? Because we've built trust with that person. We trust them. We like them. They're approachable. They're honest, trustworthy, etc. Right? So
Yeah.
if you start by looking at everyone as a dollar sign, then people can see through that. Right? I think we've experienced that.
Oh, yeah.
I think you and I kind of both know someone who would see people as a dollar sign, and
Yeah.
I don't think it was very genuine. A relationship wasn't genuine because if you don't hear or feel the right things from that person, you kind of cut them off because they're not a
Oh,
business transaction in the future.
yeah.
You see it, like it just comes back to you. It comes back to you. And that's the reason why I asked you, is because people that I work with, I guess, are kind of struggling with that as to, well, I'll only go and connect with a recruiter, for example,
Yeah.
because I want something from them. And then on the other side, the recruiter will reach out to you because they see you as that dollar sign.
Yeah.
I don't think many people have the patience to play that long game to say, well, you might not be the right fit today,
Yeah.
but if I like you, I'll contact you a year from now and say, hey, do you know anyone who's hiring? Or
Totally.
there's that. So I think, rejection and timing, it all plays a part in it as well. But building organic, good, healthy relationships works because then you can filter out the bad.
I think so. And don't get me wrong, rejection's been part of my journey a lot. Again, it's another thing you have to be okay with. You have to be okay. Of course, I've been through a process of not hearing back from a client, sending a proposal, or not hearing back from a recruiter. Like, I go through that as well. That never stops. I don't take it personal. It's no longer something that bothers me. And I know if one door doesn't open, there will be another one opening for me that's way better. And that's how I always look at it, from that positive side. And yeah, I think you sort of slowly learn how to deal with that. But also, yeah, like I agree. I think knowing that a relationship is, especially again as a freelancer, as a designer building a network, that r- building a relationship that's just around work, it's awkward. And there's only so much you can get out of that. I remember actually, there's something else at university they will ask you to do a lot. Go to networking events and go to conferences so you can meet designers who can potentially lead to some work. And some people at uni were very comfortable at the time selling themselves. Like, I think I actually remember one of my friends, she was really good at that. And that led her to do some amazing work. But not everyone was comfortable. Not everyone was an extrovert. And so there was a little bit of a struggle because, you feel like you go to these events and, you come out and you didn't get anything out of it. And all of a sudden you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But in reality, that is probably the worst place you can go to network, because speakers who are invited there, they're not thinking this is a opportunity to give someone's work. In fact, they're probably thinking, this is my opportunity to also network so I can potentially, grow my studio or do something else or collaborate with this other designer that I admire. And so you have all these juniors kind of around you going, oh, this is so exciting. I love your work. Like, maybe here's my flow. You want to check it out? Maybe this can lead to something else. It's a bit, in my opinion, I've always said this, it's a bit broken. The whole idea of networking like that doesn't work. And yeah, I think I learned that the hard way. And so I made it a practice, and I said to myself, if I find work through a contact, it's because we had such a great chat, we connected, and it feels like I can trust that person and they trust me to get the job done and to actually build something good.
It's what you described gave me the vision. The industry is so unique that when we go to those events and you see, it's like the Hollywood red carpet, basically. You see a celebrity when you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the head of design of, XYZ company. And you
Yeah.
see like, these enthusiastic young designers that just sort of gravitate towards that person and introduce themselves. I think it's brilliant. I like that side of it.
There's something novel about it. Yeah.
It's great because I just have a 9 to 5 job. I'm just the head of design at ABC company. Why are these people coming up to me? And
Yeah.
it's that, right? Like, so that person, the head of design, let's say in this example, would be like, I'm being treated like a celebrity. What
Yeah.
do these people want from me? And then these young designers are thinking, that's the head of design who can open doors.
Yeah.
But it's just a 9 to 5 job. That this person has a 9 to 5, but they're likable, they're approachable, and I like their talk. I like their LinkedIn posts because, and the point what I'm trying to make now is what you said about extroverts and introverts. There's some of us that do things outward, very overt, like in public, and some of us are doing things behind the scenes. So to your point, there are people networking outwardly like that in public, and there are people networking behind the scenes. And something that I'm writing about now is that in design in particular, their fascination with hiring extroverts because they want you to fit into that corporate sort of environment of being social and outgoing. And a candidate that I'm helping at the moment, I'm coaching them, put them forward for an interview. And the feedback I got from the hiring manager was, we're looking for someone more outgoing. And I thought designers and engineers, developers, mostly are introverts, sit there and work on their own, and they're not really talkative, right? And so because you think someone is an extrovert, they can present verbally, that means that they're good. So I'm finding that in the industry, it was like extroverts versus introverts. Who do you hire? Because for us, when in that internship, when I brought you on, I wouldn't say you were an extrovert, but you were someone that was capable of having conversation, and we could sit quietly and have a conversation. Extrovert not being going around the office and high-fiving people and being this loud person. That's not really what we do. But going to events, to circling back to your original point,
Yeah.
I love conferences and events, but yeah, you're right. Remember the one that I came to watch you speak at?
Yes.
Pizza, beer, social. It's great because it brings people together.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, I'm a very confident person, but I didn't find myself getting up, walking around, introducing myself to people, which I should have,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
but I just didn't. I was like, well, what I did the following day, I emailed the organizer of the event on LinkedIn. I DM'd them and got in touch and we had a chat. When
Right.
you're there,
You know,
it's like, I'm there to listen to a talk. I'm there to learn about something.
yeah.
As confident as I was, getting up, walking around, introducing yourself to strangers, I just didn't feel it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but
Well, and this is coming from you. You have a lot of experience, like plenty of experience. Like you have nothing to shy away about. But imagine other people who are just getting started. It's a lot harder because I feel like they don't have anything to offer. I think that's where I think the networking in that kind of environment works for a handful of people and not for everyone. Actually, I wish a lot more people had approached me. I had some people approach me at that event and ask me questions, and I was giving them the attention that they deserve because I felt I don't know what's going on in their mind. I don't know if they are, you know, risking it all at this stage, going, hey, I'm gonna, go and speak to this person because I really like the talk, whatever it was. And but I'm not a confident person. I'm a introverted, but I'm still gonna do it. And um, to me, that was like the least I can do is give them my attention, listen to them, and have a good chat. It's a tricky one. I think there's also a little bit of, if you're an introvert, what do you do, right? So that's the biggest question then. But then I always say, if you do really good work, the work should speak for itself and speak for you at the same time. I always hear this thing like, oh, if I'm an introvert, how do I sell myself? And what do I do? Focus in the work and make sure that your work is something that wherever it is, it shines. And then it doesn't matter, so much, whether you're an introverted or you're not comfortable
no,
speaking
because
out.
it takes courage for like at that event where you were speaking. A former student of mine, she just came up and introduced herself, and we hugged, and that's courage because
Yeah,
I'm sitting there, and someone just comes up and sort of introduce, and we'd never met in person, so
yeah,
it's an online student. I think a lot of that advice for these younger sort of juniors to go and network like at those events has to be adjusted because not all of them are going to do it. I think, and if you are introvert, then you can adjust your own approach. There's other ways to network without going to these sorts of events and expecting to go and talk to everyone in the room.
yes.
Do it online, do it on LinkedIn, do it on, you know, whatever platforms there are out there or smaller events. I think that's a bit more of a personal approach. It's good for them just to build up their confidence as well. Because they're, like I said, at that event, I'm here to listen and learn. I just wasn't feeling to get up and talk to. Plus, I hadn't done it in a long time. That was the first meetup in 2 or 3 years.
Which I appreciate, by the way, that you took the time to come and visit.
Because I believe in them. It's aside from the fact that you were speaking, and aside from the fact that Framer is something interesting to me,
Yeah,
it's just that, and I wrote about this recently too. We don't have enough of those events.
yeah,
Like, we don't have enough of those. So you've been to the events where you go there and you can feel like they've put on this meetup and this event just because, or it's a promotion for something, and you
yeah.
walk away thinking, what
What
did
did
I
I
learn
learn?
from this? What was my takeaway? Right. So
Yeah,
this event, I was going to learn something. I was going to take something away from it. Those events, yeah, we don't have enough of them so that you can give the community. I mean, we did prior to 2020 when we all started going online. But if you give designers in particular enough of a community to go and interact with, I think a lot of those introverts can break through that barrier as well because they'll feel more at home. Hey, most people in this room are like you.
Yeah.
You know, people in this room, the majority, it's not like going to a big design conference. Like if you went to South by Southwest, these junior introverts would be completely drowned out.
Oh, it'll be overwhelming.
You wouldn't do it. Right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. But those smaller events, I think, if they were held monthly,
Yeah.
whether it's Framer tutorials each month, whether it's something similar, whether it's people like you presenting their work or a project and just having a talk, I think a lot of those people would gravitate towards that because it's more educational.
I mean, I may be biased because I was involved in the event, but I think, and I felt as well that the it was very engaging for the crowd. And in fact, the feedback that we received after was that everybody came out very inspired. And that actually, I think personally, for me, it was a very proud moment because I've been on the other side, sitting, like you said, watching a meetup and feeling like I just came here for the free pizza. Like there was nothing else valuable that I took away from this session. And so even when I was doing the presentation, I wanted to make sure that people learned something and it wasn't just, hey, look at my work, but rather what can you actually take away? What can you now, it's, in particular with Framer, like, can I actually now go and do it myself? It was a very good session because it did feel like people took something away and they were super excited about it. Framer is also something it was a given that, that Ryan organized the event because he's been seeing the growth of Framer from the beginning. He's been involved since the early days. And then there was nothing like it in Melbourne. And yet everybody was sort of starting to notice Framer and to talk about it. It was just a natural given that, if we put the event out, that people were going to get excited because people want to learn about it. And there's some resources, and I think it's starting to be more on the internet, but there aren't thousands of Framer tutorials out there. I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe in the last, in the last few months, there's been more, but I think there's still sort of an appetite to learn, and there's still a lot of there's still a bit of a gap, I would say, in terms of
Well,
that.
I mean, you remember that how many design tools have come and gone. We're always looking for like a new tool. I remember
Yeah.
when we worked at an agency together. I remember we would go through emails and articles of, hey, here's a new tool, and we'd mess around with it for a while to see if it was any good. There's so many. I think today, because Figma has such a sort of stronghold on the industry as a
Mm.
D tool, no one's really talking about Sketch, and you know
Well, yeah,
Adobe's given up on XD. So it's
there may
like,
be a comeback of Sketch, actually. I'm not
right,
sure. Don't quote me on this, but I read somewhere that it's not going to die. But I mean, is it going to do any damage? Who knows?
I don't know. I mean, even when we looked at like InVision and what they were trying to do, I think Figma. I'll come back to Framework, but because my point is, Figma is a perfect example of how you can embed UX thinking right in the middle of the product,
Yes.
and it's a design tool, so
Yeah.
logically it should be design centered and led by designers. Whereas I
Mhm.
think what Adobe was, it's too big, and their tool was driven more with the marketing side of the company and other departments, so the business side of things. With Framer, it's more around something efficient, something new,
Yeah.
and something different to put on their resume, right? I think that's what I found at that event. This tool looks quite easy to use.
Mm.
And even though I'm not really on the tools these days as much,
Yeah.
I remember going away and having a look at what Ryan's team are doing or the sort of plugins they're building and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
how could I use it? Maybe I can use it on my personal project, right? So, if what did you see in Framer? Because you've had so much experience with different tools, how does it stack up with other tools that you've used?
Well, first off, my journey to Framer was a little bit different. I didn't think Framer and let's build a website there. I actually found Framer through another app called Spline, which is focused more on the 3D world. And then in that journey of playing around with Spline, and for the first time feeling like I was actually being able to tap into a world that I always wanted to tap, because I always sort of found 3D to be really exciting, but never really had the time to do it. Through that journey, actually, I came across an integration, which effectively led you can actually bring in some of those 3D, I guess, projects into Framer. And that was to me kind of the start of it. I thought, wow, so for the first time, I can actually build a website with an interactive 3D element like I've always sort of seen on this, award-winning websites. And I can do that for myself, like on my own. Let's do it. And that's how I started, I guess, exploring a little bit more into the Framer world. So that was probably one factor. I think the whole idea that I can be creative, like actually creative in the digital realm, because up until that point, you'd always sort of rely on a gun of a developer to bring some of these ideas to life. But it felt like Framer had made it a lot easier. So for me, that was the key thing. Being able to sort of imagine something and actually implement it. That was like, even today, I think that's such a magical thing to have as a designer.
Yeah.
Being able to bridge that gap between ideation and implementation, there's nothing like it. I mean,
Yeah.
Figma can only take it so far.
If you're a designer and you can work out which tools and plugins or whatever it is that work for you, that's your toolkit. That's your sort of
So
ammunition that you have that could differentiate you. Like you can go and find clients between Figma and Framer. I can build a successful business. Great.
yeah,
And I can also showcase my design skills. So I think that's what you were showing us at that event. I'm thinking, we were nerding out on like 3D shapes back in the day. If I can create something unique, small sort of micro interactions or animations with a new tool, and I can do it efficiently, and
yeah,
clients like it,
yeah,
then I'll stick to these tools, right? So I think a lot of designers are hungry for that of what tools are out there, what can I do? Figma isn't designing your websites, it's designing the screens, but Framer was like taking it to the next level. And Framer, it's kind of pre-built. That's what I was looking at. I was thinking these things are kind of pre-built. I can build an e-commerce site in Framer and make it look good.
no,
I'm
now,
doing
yeah,
Yeah, I'm doing less actual UI design in there because I'm not designing the UI from scratch. I'm more constructing the structure and layout, right? Because these guys have built something for me in bits and pieces already, and I can put it together and then add my touch on top. That was my takeaway, and I thought if you're a designer getting started today,
yeah.
Framer and Figma just do the work for you.
I mean, in comparison to where we started, 100%. I think it was like, and I kind of didn't have that time as a graphic designer where you'd actually do things by hand. I think that was like the that our version was a lot more modern, even though we now look back and we think, man, like we're building websites in Photoshop. That's ludicrous to even think that we're still in that, in 2024. But, the beautiful thing about Framer is that whilst there's still a little bit of simplicity in the process, there is still a lot you can explore and experiment with and do from scratch. Like you can basically start your website with a blank canvas and just go. And the beautiful thing about that is that, there's still a little bit of that, I guess, room for, exploration. So you can still be fully creative, like nothing's given to you. And that's where you see a lot of websites in Framer. Actually, if you check Framer's gallery, they've got this amazing portfolio of people who've used Framer for different projects, and the stuff you see is really inspiring. Like that's the part that actually excites me the most.
Mm.
When I see someone pushing the tool to to a point that you didn't think it was possible, and you see some crazy micro interactions, some interactive websites that, if anything, seeing that just right now where it's only the start, I feel like this tool is here to stay for a long time, and the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they, and I don't know, maybe they do, but I'm wondering if they have any plans to implement some sort of AI plugin in there, because there are a number of AI tools and they don't do it very well. You can build something, you can build a page like a landing page, you can give it a prompt. I think with,
Potentially.
yeah, Framer, I really like the UI. I like the cleanliness of what you can actually build,
Yeah.
because having struggles with like a WordPress and a WooCommerce, I don't like the UI of the checkout flow, for example. I'm putting something together now for myself, the checkout flow it's just based on whatever that theme has. It's horrible. It's not
Yeah.
customizable. But with Framer, I'm thinking I could do that myself. And it actually looks really good because I want it to be consistent with my brand.
Yeah.
Your brand is one thing, and then users hit the checkout flow and it looks completely different because WooCommerce is a separate thing. Or if you're using Stripe as your payment gateway, it has its own UI, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're using some PayPal. So that consistency I could see in what you were presenting and what I saw later on their site. It goes back to what we were saying about building trust and with like your personal brand. If it looks good, people think you're more credible.
I
Or
think,
if it looks organized, at least, and clean, people think you're more credible.
yeah. Well, I think that's another to your question before, like why did I gravitate to Framer? Once I was able to explore and see a lot more about it, I realized what this tool gives me is control. I don't want to sound like a control freak or a perfectionist, even though, I mean, I pled guilty to perfectionism. I actually like to kind of, be able to sort of go, that color or that detail that's just not working for me. I can't tell why, but it's not working for me. I want to change it, and be able to look at something and make that change. And like, as you were saying, I want the consistency across from the moment someone sees a product all the way until they purchase it. The moment you release a project and you weren't able to control that, you're always going to have that feeling of, man, like only if we were able to do it this way. Whereas with Frame, I don't have that. I can actually go, you know what? I'm going to change that because it doesn't work. And I'm going to make this website feel like the kind of website that I will love to visit. And that's very empowering. Like that's the most powerful feeling you can have as a designer.
Yeah, I'm seeing those restrictions now when I'm using WordPress Elementor, whatever, for this project I'm working on for myself. Yeah, those restrictions are there. You're limited as to how you can manipulate an element on the screen.
Yeah.
Even if, like, this, when you see some text that isn't aligned, with other elements, it's the most annoying thing in the world.
Yeah.
And other platforms don't give you that flexibility because the content has to sit inside a container that sits inside another container and whatever it is, right? But you want that freedom to be able to move things around or get the platform, the tool itself, to do half the work for you.
Yeah.
That's great, right? Because designers are perfectionists. Like those true designers are. Like, we look at things that are misaligned. We look at things that we know when,
Absolutely, we do.
yeah, we know when this shade doesn't look like the other shade in the brand. You can tell these things, or when,
Yeah.
the images aren't consistent or whatever it is, So those are the struggles we experienced when we were using Photoshop and the tools before them, right? But now I think these designers now looking to build a portfolio, and I say it all the time to the people I work with: don't focus too much on the tool. Focus on what the tool can do for you.
Mm,
right?
very true.
Because like I remember years ago, you showed me Macaw. I don't know if you remember that Macaw tool.
Yes. Wow. That, man, memory
Yeah,
lane.
I don't, I don't know how many people were using it back then. What year was that? Maybe 2014,
Possible.
2015. I don't
Yeah.
know when it was. 2013
Yeah.
maybe. Um,
Wow. I
and,
forgot
and
that.
yeah, and remember back then it even spat out some CSS as well.
I
I
think
remember,
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
you would put something together and it had the so those sorts of tools. I was thinking we could use it, but not in the agency. But as a designer, you could have used it for yourself as a freelance sort of thing. But to get an agency to adopt it, it it, it comes with challenges because one, it's not a brand name, it's not
Yeah.
Adobe,
Yeah.
and two, it's like the learning curve. In our agency, we could have done it because we were very small. We're
Yeah.
not a larger agency that want to do it. But my point is, if they focus on what the tool can do for them, like a reason why people are picking up Webflow, it's like because our Webflow does code. And I'm like, if that works for you, go for it.
Yeah. I agree, actually. And by the way, I was just going to say that, also I get a lot of questions like, oh, why would I go to Frama over Webflow or the other way around? And I always say, and this is from my personal experience, right? So, to each its own. Frama to me felt like it was targeted to designers, whereas Webflow is not so much. Maybe they have changed, but when I tried it a few years ago, it felt like the learning curve was a bit higher than, just sort of jumping on the platform and figure it out. I think the beautiful thing about Frama is that it's very intuitive. You actually figure it out very quickly where you need to go and what you need to do. So that's the reason why I also stuck with it. But you're right. Like there's no right or wrong. I think it's what works best for you and ultimately to focus on what the tool can do for you as well. I mean, some people may, and I read this stuff all the time where like Webflow experts, they trash Framework because it makes it really hard to make certain decisions and to, execute on certain things. And I'm sure there's the other way around. Like, it's kind of even funny at that point where people sort of start having a discussion about, the tool. Because ultimately, I mean, if you're good at what you're doing, like, and you have the creative mind to solve the problem you have in your mind. I mean, for what it's worth, you know what? Use Photoshop, right? Like, if it's going to work for you, it's going to work. For me personally, it made my process and my creative process, which is something that I always emphasize on. It's the creative process with Frame I was able to improve to make much better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of noise out there with new designers, especially thinking about which tool is right and wrong. It's the same when they try and build their portfolio. The questions are, which platform should I use? It's
Yeah.
always an it depends answer. So
Yeah.
I think we're spoilt for choice. For me, it's more about the community. Obviously Framer has a great community behind it, similar to Figma. If you're looking for answers, you're looking for help, you're looking for a network, they're there. I don't really see that with the others. It's more, it's they have forums and things, but it's just far too big. Framer I found was a bit more personal.
Yes.
Figma as well, like who
Yeah.
people are.
You're on the money there. And thank you for adding that because I'm going to sound like a Framer ambassador now. But, that is another key thing about the platform. The community is extremely engaged. I've had instances where I, hit a wall with a project. I don't know where else to go. I post a question on the community and immediately I get someone answering that question. Even to the point where sometimes I go, send me the project remix link and I'll jump on the project and I'll solve the project. I'll solve the problem for you. It's incredible, actually. So yeah, community is another thing.
Yeah, that's what I value. I appreciate that because I just see that these are people that are passionate about the tool and about design. And
Yeah.
like even just briefly chatting to Ryan from Insert Frame, he doesn't work for Framer, but why would you go and build a business around this one tool? Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there must be some passion behind it. And, it's that's what I was looking at. And I'm thinking, awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a community behind it. So, I'll keep an eye on it. But I think maybe next time when we chat, you can run us through. So I remember you were showing a few things that you were working on, especially the 3D one you were working on with Spline, I think it was.
Yes.
If we go through that, I think that would be great just to get an idea of the way to start a project or what it can do, and like some of the efficiencies behind it as well. Because I think people feel like they're looking for as much of a minimal interface as possible with a tool,
Yeah.
and Figma gave them that, but I don't think people really understand what we were saying before, like what the tool can actually do for you. So
Yeah.
don't worry about the interface. I mean, Photoshop had one of the worst, most complex interfaces ever. But how many of those features did we ever really use? You
Oh,
know?
we probably are using like 5% of them.
Yeah, for us, we weren't, unless you're like a heavy duty photo retouching person, you'd use
Exactly.
set of features there. But um, yeah, so maybe next time we chat, Framer would be great for us to sort of demo with you. You can run us through that. That'll be great.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. I got some good projects, some exploration. I'm always on the tool. I'm always trying to come up with a different way to approach a layout, a micro interaction. In fact, I'm in the process right now of building a lot more templates. So we've actually just launched a template. Ryan and we collaborated, and it's already in the market. Actually, it's actually getting some love. It's the first one as well, and it was great because it was an opportunity to again kind of explore what the platform can do with a little bit more freedom. There's no brief. There's something there to be explored further. I think there's heaps of platforms, really good platforms. Like when I say platforms, I mean templates. There's already heaps of good templates. I'm excited that 2025 is going to be, that's the plan. I want to start building more of those creative templates that people can download. And, it's also, I feel like the template's also a good opportunity for someone to like see what Framework can do and even tap a little bit more into. So this template that we just launched actually has some spline 3D elements in it. So it was kind of a given. I thought if we're going to build this template, let's give people a view of all the creative stuff they can do with it.
Yeah. No, I'll have to definitely check it out next time we chat, because I think if designers can see how they can push the boundaries with like what the tool can actually do,
Yeah.
then they can get an idea of what it can do for them.
Yeah.
So unless they see it, then, which I think is what Figma did a great job with that, showing people like what it can do. But no, definitely, I think so. Just before I let you go, when you said 2025, so my last question was going to be, what do you think is going to happen in 2025 with the industry, especially where we live in Melbourne?
Yeah.
It's just like it's not even competitive anymore. It's gone beyond that. And I'm speaking to many recruiters who are saying it's broken in many ways, the way that, and it could be an economic factor, it could be a number of reasons, but the tech industry, what do you think?
Oh.
What do you see? What's your sort of optimistic view, but also
Hey.
maybe you're not so optimistic view?
Wow. That is $1 million question. I mean, 2024, before I answer 2025, I got to give context about what happened in 2024 quickly. 2024 was by far the most interesting year for me as a freelancer. And everyone that I spoke to had a similar view, which also made it a bit more scary. I think the market is way more competitive naturally. Again, there's more tools now than ever before. To an extent, it's a lot easier to do what we do. And I feel like for better or for worse, anyone with a laptop is a designer these days. And I think that's a very, very dangerous thing to deal with. And so, I mean, yeah, it feels like we're now dealing with a lot more factors. My personal, I guess, view on what's going to happen next year. The positive side of me, I want to focus on basically improving my craft and ensuring that my work, it's way better than what I did this year, so that I can continue to have the clients and the projects that I want, and to be able to, kind of applying a bit of stoicism here. What can I do that I can control? I think it's the work and ensuring that I still provide a great service as a freelancer and that actually people trust my work. That's what I can do. In terms of what's outside of my control and when the industry's headed, the market seems to be getting a little bit better than it was this year. And I think there's a lot more opportunities, but it's going to be more competitive next year. And now you introduce AI into the picture, right? And again, like, I think now a lot more people have power to do stuff, design, even like creative work.
Yeah.
Then, maybe we're not so needed anymore. And it may not, that may continue to get worse in the future.
It's going to be
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so you know what? I think the market, it's in a process of evolution and change. I think we as designers, like I said, need to really focus on the craft and adopt some of the new changes too. I think that's very, very important. Don't sit on the sidelines watching all of this happen, go, oh man, like I'm going to lose my job. But rather engage with it, embrace it. What can AI do for me in my day to day? And yeah, just know that we're in a constant change. And our job as designers is to ensure that we stay relevant as much as possible instead of criticizing, go crazy and freak out. What can you do in what you can control to, again, make the most out of it?
Yeah,
So
it's being familiar with what's out there. You can't
yeah,
adopt it all. You're not expected to, but yeah, be familiar with what's out there. See what it is. I'm asking those questions because everyone has a different viewpoint. What's Canva doing with AI? What's OpenAI going to do with design plugins and things? There's so many things out there that is giving other people power to design things. And
yeah,
to your point, how do I stay ahead of that curve? How do I still stay relevant?
mm,
So it goes back to what we said right at the beginning when we were talking about that foundation of purpose, principle, and
yeah,
your design story. I think these tools kind of, hey, I can use an AI tool and design a landing page.
yeah,
But it's the tool that's designing and not you. You're inputting a prompt. You know,
correct.
give me a design a landing page that people can adopt a pet. It's like
Yeah, totally,
anyone can
totally.
write that. So
Yeah,
it's that. But yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying before about that story, the storyline behind it, and the sort of design thinking
yeah.
perspective. Yeah. So, but anyway, I think we'll chat more about that later. And next time we'll chat, we'll go through, show us a bit of the work as well. But
I would love to. Yeah, 100%.
always good chatting.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Time flies when we get together, so that's always a good sign. Yeah, thank you for making the time, and yeah, look forward to the next one.
All good. We'll speak soon.